excited about getting away from the option offenses that we've both seen over the last couple of weeks. Pittsburgh, Notre Dame has been some exciting football games, especially in my tenure, both at Cincinnati and here at Notre Dame. I think we all know about last year's game. I think what we're focused on is, for our guys, one more step in the progression of our football team. And that is, again, in November, playing better football. And offensively, we found a pretty good rhythm offensively over the last few weeks. We want to build on that. And defensively, get back to playing, traditional football, getting away from the option. We played extremely well against USC, and we want to build on that. That's what we're looking for. We're playing a very good defensive football team in Pittsburgh. Aaron Donald has been a one-man wrecking crew, especially last week against Georgia Tech. Against the option, he was a force. But we know about him from last year. Big physical defensive line, and he will be somebody that will have to game plan and find a way to slow down. Tackles for a loss. He's in the backfield. Very active. I think with him, you have a very powerful guy, but he's also extremely quick at the point of attack. Uses a lot of different techniques to get into the backfield, and we're going to have to. We were just talking about things that we'll have to do to mitigate some of the things that he does. Offensively, two outstanding receivers. We know about Devin Street. He's been a consistent performer for Pittsburgh year in and year out, somebody that I'm quite familiar with. And then now their freshman, Tyler Boyd. He had a great game last week and now gives them great balance in the passing game. And Tom Savage, I know Tom when I was at Cincinnati, he was at Rutgers, a big, strong, physical kid who can throw the football. Big offensive line. Coach Chris does a great job of wanting to display a physical presence on the offensive side of the ball. They're well coached. And, again, we've had some great battles with them and expect another very close, tough, hard-nosed football game against Pittsburgh. So we go on the road. It's a nationally televised game. Our guys are excited about that audience. And certainly for us, another challenge as we go on the road. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
Brian, right here.
Yeah.
How much more does Jalen Smith know what he's doing now than maybe he did in week 1 and week 2?
Oh, I would say that each and every week he builds on his knowledge base. And that doesn't necessarily happen in all the players that I've coached in my years. Sometimes it takes a year to kind of digest everything and then come back that next year and you really see kind of a rise in your play. But with this young man, things happen to him and they stick. He learns from mistakes that are made and applies them the next week. So he's an extraordinary player in the sense that an accelerated learning curve for somebody that experiences it for the first time and very rarely does it come back to hit him again.
He seems to be in the right place for some big plays. Is that a function of not necessarily just being a good athlete, more a function of being a good athlete in the right spot?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's a function of his athletic ability, his ability. I'll take the reverse. He was halfway on the other side of the field when the reverse occurred against Navy. His athletic ability brought him back to the play, went from speed to power after two people had missed the tackle. I mean, really, Ilo Hardy and Bennett Jackson missed the tackle. He went from speed to power, made the tackle on the play, but was all the way across the field. So that was a product of his incredible athleticism. But he also has a sense, a football sense, that also contributes to that development as well.
And on your defensive line, I think everyone thought Stephon Lewis and Sheldon was a pretty good place to start for a defense. Mm-hmm. How frustrating, or how much of a setback has it been when you haven't seen that group together all that much at 100% health all
Well,
year?
it has been difficult. Obviously, we've played some really good stretches of football. I think other than maybe the last drive against Arizona State and USC, we really put together some good football against some very good offensive football teams. And, never really getting the three of those guys on the field at one time says a lot to the group coming together. Then you lose Jared Grace, and we just continue to play. And, I'd like to look again at, the development of some of the players that have come in and played really good football. The option is a different set of circumstances. We're looking at this weekend, hopefully, getting at least those three guys on the field at the same time. At what level, at health, we'll see where it is. I think everybody at this time of the year isn't at 100%, but I think we're getting close where we may get all three of those guys on the field at one time.
Brian, you mentioned sort of getting into a rhythm offensively. As you're sort of grading your offensive efficiency, do you balance the opponent that you have just played, where maybe you have some physical advantages that you won't have in the last three games, or is that sort of something that's irrelevant and you're just looking for execution regardless of who it's against?
Well, I think each and every week what you're trying to do is establish who you are and what you know you can do well against your opponents. You look at, the Michigan State game. Everyone was talking about why you couldn't run the football. Well, nobody's been able to run the football on Michigan State this year. So you try to do the things that you can do each and every week. We felt like we could run the ball against Navy, and we did. This week it might be something else. So when I'm talking about the offense, is knowing what we can do well based upon what we're going to get. That's the rhythm for me. And knowing what we can do, what we're going to call on in terms of pass plays, and what we're going to ask our offensive line to do in terms of the running game. I think we know what we can do when afforded that opportunity.
You mentioned on Sunday maybe moving some guys around in the front seven. You weren't really ready to commit to it at that point. Are you going to make some subtle adjustments? I mean, does Jerron Jones kind of become the next Kona Schwenke, or did you move a linebacker around? What do you do moving forward in your front seven?
I don't think anything drastic, really. Isaac Rochelle, obviously, Jerron Jones, Justin Utupo is going to be asked, obviously, to do more for us. Anthony Rabasa is going to have to do some things for us at the CAT. But the guys that have been in our defensive meeting room are going to have to be those guys that step up and perform in roles that are expanded. But again, we're hopeful about Lewis being able to play a role this weekend. He'll practice today. We're hopeful that we're going to see more of Sheldon. He'll continue to practice and see where that takes us. And then Stephon moving out to more of his natural role outside is going to be a benefit for us as well.
With Lewis, is conditioning a concern of yours, or do you sort of go into the week knowing you're not going to get 50 plays from him on Saturday, regardless of how healthy he is?
That's a good question. I normally would be concerned about the volume, and maybe I am a little bit, but he's worked really hard. He's been in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and that's really early for most people, but really early. And Lewis would admit that that's really early for him, too. He's really worked hard in these last couple of weeks to stay fit. He had a jug of water with him today, hydrating. I think he's really committed to trying to give everything that he can. He's committed himself to getting back here and doing the best he can to help our football team. On
Sunday, you were a little unclear about Ben's injury. Did you get some clarification on that? What's the outlook for him?
It's an ACL.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his surgery?
Yeah, he'll have surgery once that quiets down a little bit. It'll probably be a couple of days, and then we'll have surgery on the knee.
Thanks.
Brian, over here, follow up on defensive line. A couple weeks ago, it seemed like Stephon Tuitt was a guy who, whether it was back or hernia or whatever, it was the one that was hurt. Now he's kind of come into his own. Just how instrumental has he been the last couple of weeks, kind of playing like the guy everyone expected him to?
Well, the option offenses that we saw, really kind of minimizes what he can do for us. I think getting into a more traditional offense this week, you'll see more from Stephon. I think he can influence the game a lot more than, say, inside, where they can simply block back or kind of scramble block in his legs and kind of neutralize. I think he'll have more of an impact on the game this week in terms of what he can do with his size and athleticism than maybe the last couple of weeks.
And Sunday you said Collinsworth was going to have an MRI yesterday, I think.
He did. The MRI came up clean, but he has some neck issues, and when I say issues, spasms, facet joint. I don't want to get too in depth because I don't want to say something that's not medically correct, but it has to do with soft tissue and some joint areas, and he will not practice today. We're hopeful that that clears up, but I would say he's questionable right now.
For a guy who had season-ending shoulder surgery last year, I mean, is that maybe not related, but you got to be a little extra careful there? Or?
That was not brought up to me from our doctors or our chiropractor, Jerry Hofforth, who does a lot of work, all the work with our teams. They weren't concerned about any other, pieces kind of, that were related to any other surgeries, because he's had back surgery as well. They thought this was isolated to the neck itself. He was better today, but he's going to need another day before we know where he is.
You talked about handwriting and how aggressive he played on Sunday or on Saturday.
Yeah.
Is he in the right? Presuming that Watt moves back into the starting lineup, is handwriting in the running for time at right guard in competition with Elmer?
No, he would not be. Steve would stay there, would continue to take all the reps there. Connor would come in strictly for Chris, or if there was another injury.
You've coached against Pittsburgh for many years, at Cincinnati as well. What are some of the common threads that run through that program, regardless who's coaching them or where you're coaching?
Well, running the football has always been one of their trademarks. They've always had outstanding running backs, through the years that we've played them. This year it seems to be more prolific in terms of throwing the football. Maybe that's a little bit different from last year. But they always just play us so hard. And before I got here, 2 losses, I think, in overtime, or very difficult games that went to overtime. So it just, Midwestern team, tough, blue-collar, physical. They don't seem to, like Notre Dame very much, and they want to beat Notre Dame. I just think it's one of those games where you're going to go in and it's going to be a fight, and we're prepared for that.
Obviously, when you run the ball as well as you did Saturday, the mix of running backs seems to work out and look good. But I mean, do you feel that you've reached the kind of 3-man mix that you were looking for, and provided that Folston doesn't take any steps back? I mean, is he fully in the mix now at that position?
I would say that he's fully in the mix. I think you guys have all seen that each week changes, but I would say that barring any injury, he is definitely in that rotation. I was pleased with all of the backs. Circumstances were such that Amir didn't get but 1 snap, but I was really pleased with the way George ran and his carries, and obviously Cam. So we were really pleased with the 3 of those guys and the way they ran the ball.
Thank you.
Follow up on Chris. Is his injury something that you have to kind of build the muscle around the PCL to strengthen the knee, or is it? I mean, what's kind of the nature of that?
Well, the PCL was torn only a week ago, so he still had some pain. So it was an issue of pain. There was some inflammation that was still in there, which now has subsided greatly. I won't talk for Chris relative to his own pain level, but that has definitely decreased. Talking to Rob Hunt this morning, we don't have much inflammation in there. But then the big piece is there's a feeling of instability without that PCL. And you have to make some adjustments along the way in terms of how that feels. We really only got a chance to do some things with him on Thursday last week. He felt okay on Thursday. I don't know that he really cut it loose on Thursday. And then Saturday in pregame, when he really cut it loose, he felt deficient in a sense that he didn't feel like he could do some things and didn't want to let the team down. I think with a full week of practice, which he'll practice today, we think that he's going to be able to make the accommodations to be able to play at the level that he needs to play at. So I think this is both swelling out of there, pain now decreased, and then making the accommodations.
Is there maybe a thought that he wouldn't have had a better chance to play if he played tackle, where he has to do more lateral movement? Is there anything like that where the need would allow him to not have as much lateral movement?
I think it would be more difficult if he was at tackle.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Coach had a question about defense. It seemed like in an Air Force game you could be a little more aggressive at times, but with so many new faces in there against Navy, especially in the second half, I mean, you really have to kind of stay in a base and not take any shots because you're not sure sometimes where they're going to be. I mean, is that a reality when you have so many new faces in there?
To a degree, I would say that wasn't the only reason. There could be a list of things. Execution on Navy's part, lack of execution on our part. I think look, they had 4 possessions, right? And we stopped them 2 out of the 4 possessions. And, we felt like we had a chance if we get lined up right on one of the other possessions on 4th down that we stop them 3 out of the 4 possessions in the second half. So we kind of look at it in a different, perspective relative to what happened out there. But yeah, there's a number of factors that go to that. The bottom line is we're past that, and we feel like moving on to Pittsburgh, we're pretty excited about getting away from the option for a year.
In high school, a lot of guys with the size of our offensive linemen might have played short time on defense and short yardage or goal line. Any guys have come to you this week and say, Coach, if you need me, I can give you a look?
Yeah, we have. And you're talking about the depth on the defensive line.
Right.
Yeah, Bruce Hagee's going to play a little bit. He'll be with the defense this week in an emergency situation if we feel like we get a need there. So he'll take some reps with the defense this week. Again, I think that would be more of an emergency situation.
Brian, speaking of emergency situations, did you consider either Houndshell or Matuska, and where does that? How far?
Yeah,
do they
we've
go?
made a decision not to re-engage Chase Houndshell this year. So we made that decision last week, and so that was made prior to the game. So that never entered into the conversation. And yeah, we had already made the decision on Matuska not to put him in the game.
Where is Chase? I mean, if you had to play him now, could he play in a game? Could he be effective, or is he just getting the rust off from not playing for you?
It's more of the rust and re-engaging into contact. The surgery that he had, I think we're at that point where we just want to gradually bring him back. We don't want to go from 0 to 60 with Chase. We'd like to, as we are right now, we're re-engaging him into light contact, to moderate contact, to full contact, and we'd like to take that through and space that out through the spring instead of jumping him into a full contact situation after a third surgery. So this is, and again, I using this analogy could be way off, but it's similar to somebody who maybe is a pitcher who's had a couple of surgeries, and you're really putting them on a pitch count, and you're really being careful. We just want to be really careful and bring him along slowly. A doctor would say, hey, he's medically cleared to go in. We get that, but we want to bring him along slowly. He's worked so hard to get back that we're going to reintroduce him to contact in that kind of setting.
Tyler Stockton, your initial inkling to bring him back for a fifth year? Because he's a guy that hadn't played a lot, had one career tackle going in this year. Just what went into your decision, and what do you feel like you'll get from him if he has to play extended minutes on the field?
Well, we like the young man in terms of the locker room. He's great in the locker room. He's a great kid. Really like his personality. He's a team player. He's done whatever we've asked him to do, whether it's on scout team. He's just a real good team player for us. He's also a big body. And the one thing that we lack around here is sometimes the depth in those positions. So we felt like he brought a lot to our program at the scholarship level, that 1 through 85. He brought value to this program. Now, as it relates to the reps that he's gotten on the field, he hasn't gotten a lot, but when he's got in there, he's done what we've asked him to do. On Saturday, he was able to go in there and do his job. He knows that he's not a guy that's going to play 30, 40, 50. So I think the last piece of that, Eric, is that he's somebody that when we sat him down, we told him what his role was going to be, and he accepted that role. And that's big for me, too, is that he's got to accept the role that we give him.
With Lou, he's seen, obviously, I would say, the MRI, and you guys have talked to him about maybe what his concerns are. I'm trying to put a fine point on it. With Lou, is it the pain? Is it concern that he may injure himself for a longer term? What is kind of holding him back?
He was in a lot. The tendonitis is real. So the tendonitis that he has will require the similar surgery that Greg Bryant had. This is something that is chronic and will require attention at some time. So after the USC game, he was in real pain, and it was a real situation for him. Coupled with the fact that the worst thing is to get re-injured, the next week or the week after. So this was a decision that talking to Brian Radigan, our team surgeon, and Rob Hunt, that it was best that he get a PRP, which then puts you out for 2 weeks, which really mitigated the pain that he had with the tendonitis, which now will allow him to go back in now and play the game the way he can play it. We don't want him out there hobbling around and putting himself in harm's way. And he feels good about it, and he knows he can help the football team.
With Council's surgery, is it likely going to push him out of spring next spring, or is there a chance he'll be limited?
Probably going to be limited for the spring, yes.
And then last one from me, kickoff coverage. We talked about it a little bit on Sunday. Did you kind of follow through with that?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
We did a full, extensive look at it. There's some things that I've addressed, and I would say this. Sometimes when you look at what you're doing, you're trying to do too much. And when it comes to kickoff coverage, we were accounting for probably a little bit too much out there instead of, getting the guys down the field and getting after the football. I think we were accounting for the triple reverse pass as well as the double reverse pass and the lonesome end play all at once instead of getting after it. And we'll make those adjustments.
Romeo Aquara sort of has become like the Steve Elmer on defense as far as number of different positions you've had to use him at. He was at the 5 last week. You have him this week listed at backup dog, and he's obviously backed up Prince also. Can you talk a little bit about his progress and the various roles he has and where you feel maybe his future might be best suited?
I couldn't talk to you about his future. I'm worried about covering kickoffs right now. So right now he's got some versatility, as you know, his ability, his size. He's right now playing in our nickel package as one of our stud end. So he definitely can put his hand on the ground. He's got some athleticism and length that he can play in space. So I can tell you that for the present, he's got the versatility that you mentioned, like a Steve Elmer that can play in a couple of different positions. I really haven't given it much thought as to what that means, moving down the line. But right now, he serves a great role for us in that he's got that kind of flexibility.
I know, I think in August, maybe you mentioned you just want him to get the cat position down because that in itself was kind of a struggle. For him to evolve to the point where now you've been utilizing him at so many areas, I mean, has that spoken more so to his own progress and development?
I'll be really straight with you on Romeo, and I don't want to get too technical. He just needs to play football more. He just needs to get more playing time. When he plays more football, he's going to be fine. The game is new to him. He wasn't brought up as a young man that played a lot of football. So each time that he steps on the field, it's new to him. He wasn't blessed with the football instincts. He is learning about the game every day, and he's making great progress every day. You can see him growing as a player. So it's less about the technical stuff for me with Romeo. Just every time he steps on that field, whether it's on a special teams assignment or whether it's playing option as a 5 technique or in the nickel package, he just keeps growing. And I don't mean physically, I mean mentally as a football player. That's what he needs the most. And as long as he continues to do that, he's going to be fine.
You gave a synopsis, kind of offense has really progressed to being a strength each week with a different area, and then the defense coming together in some areas. Where would you put special
I don't
team?
know if I said it was a strength as much as...
Just in some areas.
Well, no. What I said is that we know what we can do, and we know what we can't do. We know a lot more about our strengths and our weaknesses offensively, and that's pretty clear. And I think we know we're now 9 games into it, we know who we are offensively, and that is where we'll move forward. I don't think we're a strength in terms of being able to carry this team. We're gonna need every piece working together.
Yeah, main thing I was looking at though is special teams. State of the union there, because these next several games all expected to be similar maybe to last year, where it comes down to a play here or there.
Absolutely.
Just where do you see special teams right now overall?
Well, here's what I told our team. I think we got one of the best kickoff return guys in the country. We got to get him free. We've got to do a better job on kickoff return. Although George has done a great job, we've got to sustain some blocks. We had 2 or 3 opportunities. If we just sustain a block for another second, he's going to score a touchdown. So we spent a lot of time on special teams showing our guys, if you sustain a block here or there, a little bit more effort, you're going to get him loose. TJ Jones is look at that kid's fearless. He's caught everything. He'll catch the football. Give him an opportunity to return a punt. He will return a punt for us. So hang on to your blocks. Hang in there. Let's not have a holding penalty behind the play. Let's not have a foolish mistake. He's a heck of a return guy who's willing to do it. He's one of your best players. So let's get it done there. Kyle Brinza will kick field goals for you and win games. So now let's take care of business on kickoff coverage, which is, to me, want and desire and those kinds of things, because we're going to need them. We're going to need them this week, and then we're playing Stanford and BYU that got outstanding STs. So we need to pick up the game as it relates to our ST.
And just in case Collinsworth isn't available, I mean, where does the pecking order fall with safety there? Does Max get into the mix more, or is it Eiler?
Eiler would be 3, and certainly Max would be, obviously 4.
Thank you.
Brian, can you talk a little bit about, it seemed, we've seen what Troy Nicholas can do catching the ball. It seemed like he had a lot of really good blocks the other day. Is that something that he's been improving on, or is it something he's been consistently doing all season?
No, he's been a very good inline blocker. You know, he's gotten better. In space is where he needs to continue to work. You know, he had a holding penalty that, you know, cost us the touchdown. But no, he's done a nice job for us. He's been him and Ben Koyak. You know, I think Ben has been outstanding this year, and his maturation from earlier in the year where he was just so. He's really grown. His toughness, his ability to stick his nose in there and block for us has really risen. So both those guys in particular, I think Troy has really developed in all those areas. And you know, I don't think there's a bigger play in the game than on third down. You know, Tommy Reese hitting Troy Nicholas. You know, we're down in the game. It's third down. You know, we're behind in the fourth quarter, and Tommy and Troy hook up on a you know, a very big third down situation. So Troy's been key for us.
And the win the other day raised your record in the past 10 games of games decided by a touchdown or less to 10-0, which obviously is a very good stat. But is it bothersome at all that you've had so many close games? I mean, in this period of 22 games, 10 of them being that close, especially, I think half of them, I know you don't look at point spreads, but half of them you were favored by 2 touchdowns or more.
So you're saying I haven't covered and you're upset about me not covering? Is that the question?
Just asking, is it the fact that, you know, that you're in so many close games and some that people think you might not have been expected to be close games. Is that bothersome at all?
I mean, I guess I just look at the games differently than maybe the public, you know, views the games. Winning in college football is hard to do it each and every week. You know, teams play us, you know, so hard. I mean, you have guys from Navy in tears. You know, those are grown men crying after a game. They put so much effort and their soul into the game. I mean, it's hard to win. So I'm not discounting your thoughts. I look at it differently. That a 2-point win, a 3-point win. We just look at our team and want to get better, you know, at what we do, regardless of how we do it. We just want to get better.
Is that one of the challenges? I mean, when you're playing Navy, you know, it's a big game. This week against Pitt, national TV, for them it's a big game. And I'm not discounting, you know, but, you know, Notre Dame's on national TV every week. Is it hard to get, you know, for 12 games a season, a team emotionally ready to play with the same passion that maybe the team you're playing with every week?
Well, it's a challenge each and every week to play teams that are going to play their very best. There's no question about it. But that comes with the territory, and I knew that coming in. We've been, you know, fortunate so far that, you know, we're holding our own. You know, our guys play hard, and that's all I can ask for them. They play hard. It's interesting you bring that up because, you know, one of the things that I heard before I took this job was that, you know, the other locker room was more excited to play than the Notre Dame locker room. And then I said, well, what do you mean? Well, they were all excited and yelling and screaming. Well, of course, they were coming to Notre Dame Stadium. And I can tell you this, before we played the game, our guys were excited about playing Navy. It wasn't a morgue in our locker room. Our guys weren't sleeping. I didn't have to wake them up. They knew the challenge at hand. But our guys compete, and I'll leave you at this, just to answer the question. There's a lot of pressure at Notre Dame. We all know that. There's a lot of scrutiny. There were 9 lead changes in that game against Navy. They were down in the fourth quarter. They had to come back in the fourth quarter, and they had to hold the lead. Those kids can take that with them because that takes a lot to do those things. And I'm proud of the way they competed and won that football game. more so than what they were supposed to do. What they did do was more important to me.
This way, Brian. Piggybacking off of that, last week you talked about keeping things fresh and fun for the guys week in and week out during this part of the season. How much of an effect does Bob Diaco have on that? I know guys kind of see him as the energy guy on defense.
Bob brings energy every day. He brings it to the office. He brings it to everything that he does. So there's no question there's energy in the defensive meeting rooms every single day. But, you know, when you get to, you know, week 9 and week 10, you know, you have to be careful with the way you practice. I mean, that's the most important thing. You have to be very judicious in your time out there. You have to make sure that you get the game plan down. Big rah-rah stuff's not going to do it. But focused and to the point is very, very important at this time of the season. Making sure your team is prepared, but more importantly, that they're fresh and excited about Saturday. And so there's no tricks at this point. It's making sure your team is prepared and you're spending the amount of time on it in terms of getting them ready for Pittsburgh, but also making sure that they're fresh and ready to play on Saturday.
All right, thanks everybody. We will see